Good afternoon. Thank you for attending today. I hope all of you are doing well out in the virtual world. My name is Angela Skyby Sagarba. I'm the Contracts and Facilities Manager for the Texas Lottery Commission. This is the pre-proposal conference for the Scratch Ticket Manufacturing and Services RFP number 362-2022-0005. On the panel today, we have Eric Williams, who's our Hub Coordinator, Bob Beard, who's our General Counsel, Ryan Mendel, our Lottery Operations Director, and Robert Trelawney, our Products Manager. We are all available to answer questions during the conference. If you haven't already done so, please scan the QR code with a mobile device or use the link that was provided to sign in. A copy of the sign-in sheet will be posted on the Electronic State Business Daily and the Texas Lottery website after today's meeting. This is for sharing of information between prime vendors and subcontractors. The conference is being recorded. If you have any questions, please submit your questions in the Q&A feature throughout the conference, and we will answer in the order received during the question and answer sessions at the end of each part. Our contract specialist, Juanita Riley, will be monitoring the Q&As and reading the questions as we go throughout the conference. We will review the recording after the conference and restate the questions and answers in the Q&A document, which will be released in accordance with the schedule of events. We'll give you our best responses to your questions today. However, any questions we cannot answer today will be answered in writing and be included in the Q&A document. And that would be round one for this RFP. Please note the written Q&A document is our final answer, so be sure to read that. Following the conference, if you think of additional questions, you have an opportunity to submit these in writing. These are your opportunities to ask questions, and we encourage you to do so regarding the requirements of the RFP. If you're unsure of language written in the RFP or you need further clarification, this is your chance to receive the information you need. After proposals are received, it is then the Texas Lottery's time to ask questions and/or seek any clarification if needed. Please note that any oral communication that would alter or amend the RFP as written is not binding. Any and all changes or modifications to the RFP will be made in writing and posted to the Electronic State Business Daily and the Texas Lottery's websites. You're encouraged to check these websites throughout this process and once more before submitting a proposal. Please note there may be several RFPs posted on the website at one time, so be sure that you're reviewing the correct RFP for updates. This RFP is open to any and all vendors who can perform the services. To submit a proposal, you do not have to be registered on the CMBL, which is the Centralized Masters Bidders List in Texas, be Hub certified, nor is there any approved vendor list. We will now briefly review the RFP by parts. While we may discuss only certain sections or provisions of the RFP during the conference, all sections and provisions of the RFP are important, and you should read and understand the entire RFP before submitting your proposal. You will have an opportunity after each part to ask general questions, and we will prompt you as we get to the question and answer sessions. We'll begin now with part one of the RFP. We're not going to be showing the RFP on the screen as we're going to go through this fairly quickly. So if you want to have a soft copy open or a hard copy open, if you happen to have it, you can look at that. I'm going to start with section 1.4, the schedule of events. This section includes all the critical dates for this procurement. If there are any changes to these dates up to the deadline for proposals, an amendment will be posted on the Electronic State Business Daily and the Texas Lottery's website. Section 1.7, because we're a state agency, proposals are subject to the Public Information Act, also known as the Open Records Act. During the procurement process, we will not release any information contained in your proposal. However, if after a contract is awarded, your entire proposal is subject to this act and considered public information. If there's any information in your proposal that's confidential and exempt from disclosure under the Texas Public Information Act, you must mark it as confidential. Examples of confidential information may be financial information or information that you consider trade secret or proprietary. It's important that you mark every applicable page and/or section that you consider confidential, and if possible, mark which exception of the Texas Public Information Act it falls under. The Public Information Act is located under Texas Government Code Chapter 552. On the Office of the Attorney General's website is the Public Information Handbook, which lists all the exceptions in Texas. If you have information that you consider confidential, please respond to Section 1.7 and list the information, including a brief commentary or justification, in addition to marking individual sections and/or pages confidential. Juanita, are there any questions on Part 1?
There are no questions at this time.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to move on to Part 2, which is the proposal process. As stated in Section 2.1, I'm the sole point of contact for the RFP. All questions should be directed to me, including any Hub questions. Section 2.4, questions shall be submitted via email by the deadline in the schedule of events. Again, we have 2 rounds on this RFP. Responses will be posted on the TLC's website and the Electronic State Business Daily. Section 2.5.2, proposals must be submitted in the formats described throughout Section 2.5. So starting with 2.5.2, you need to submit 1 signed original and 15 copies of your proposal. The original should be clearly marked as original and shall be bound in a 3-ring binder. The Hub Subcontracting Plan should consist of 1 signed original and 2 copies. The signed original cost proposal should be contained in a separate sealed envelope as an attachment to the original proposal only. Be sure that your proposal contains responses to all sections and parts of the RFP, and be sure your proposal numbering corresponds with that of the RFP. You may provide a blanket acknowledgement and acceptance for parts 1, 2, and 3, unless a section requires a specific detailed answer. Parts 4, 6, 7, and 8 require a section-by-section response. That means for our 4.1, we're looking for a corresponding 4.1 in your response to the RFP. For Part 5, you need to complete and submit 1 signed original Hub Subcontracting Plan and 2 copies. This can be in a separate binder or folder. The cost proposal should be a separately sealed attachment to the original proposal only. If proposers feel a section does not provide a detailed response in the RFP, then it is acceptable to state that you will agree and comply. Section 2.5.5, the proposer's commitment, Attachment A, and the background information certification, Attachment D1, must be signed by an officer or agent of the proposer with the authority to contractually bind the proposer, and the original attachment must be included in the original proposal. Section 2.5.7, proposers must fully and completely address all goods and services and other requirements described in the RFP. Section 2.5.8, in addition to the printed proposal, you're required to submit an electronic copy on a USB drive or in a searchable PDF of the text portion of your proposal only. Do not include cost in this PDF. Section 2.5.9, please note copyrighted proposals are unacceptable and may be rejected. Section 2.6 covers the format and contents for which your proposals must be organized. This includes a letter of transmittal, an executive summary, either a blanket acknowledgement of parts 1, 2, or 3, or a section-by-section response to parts 1, 2, and 3, a section-by-section response for parts 4, 6, 7, and 8, your sealed cost proposal attached to the original proposal only, your attachment A, which is the proposer's commitment, and an attachment D1, background information certification. Section 2.7, your letter of transmittal must state that the proposal is valid for 180 days. As also include an overview of why your company is the most qualified and include a statement accepting the terms and conditions in Part 3 and/or any exceptions to such. Section 2.8, executive summary. This should be a full and concise summary and not exceed 5 pages. Section 2.10, your cost proposal, it must be in the format included in Attachment H of the RFP. Disclosure of cost in the body of the written proposal is cause for disqualification. Sealed envelope should contain only your cost proposal. Do not include any marketing materials or other information in your sealed cost proposal. The sealed cost proposal is not opened until after the proposal is scored on its technical merit. Therefore, any additional materials that are included in the sealed envelope will not be evaluated. Section 2.11, proposers may submit only one proposal and one cost proposal. Section 2.12, any RFP changes, modifications, or cancellation will be posted on the Texas Lottery's website and the Electronic State Business Daily. Section 2.15, proposal evaluation. The scoring matrix is included as attachment G and will be used for evaluation of proposals in response to this RFP. Please note there are two pass-fail categories. One is for the HSP or the Hub Subcontracting Plan, and the other is a financial analysis. Your proposal essentially goes through 4 phases once it's submitted to us. We do an initial assessment for compliance and completeness. We review it for the financial analysis and the Hub Subcontracting Plan. It's then reviewed and evaluated for its technical merit. And finally, the cost proposal is open and reviewed. If at any given time your proposal is disqualified, you will receive a notice stating such. Juanita, are there any questions on part 2?
Angela, there are no questions at this time.
Okay, we will continue on. Part 3, which is the contractual terms and conditions. This part describes the terms and conditions which apply to the procurement process and which will become a part of the contract executed pursuant to the RFP. Please read over this entire RFP document to make sure that you fully understand and will comply with all the provisions. Any exceptions to the RFP should be clearly stated in the letter of transmittal, providing specific and detailed reasons for each exception, along with suggested alternative language. The contract resulting from the RFP, or in this case, contracts, will incorporate the RFP, any amendments, the questions and responses, the contractor's proposal, and the contractor's cost proposal. Please note a performance bond is required under section 3.39 or 3.39 and is required under the State Lottery Act. Therefore, we cannot accept alternatives. Under 3.61, the apparent successful proposers may be required to take the Texas Lottery Cybersecurity Training Program and sign our Information Security Agreement. In addition, Section 3.61.2 and 3.61.3 are new laws that have passed, so those you may want to review. Juanita, are there any questions on part 3?
No, there are no questions at this time.
Thank you. All right, I will continue on. Part 4, required information. Sections 4.1 to 4.4. Although these sections seem brief in the RFP, these sections require proposers to gather, compile, and submit a great deal of detailed documentation. Please read these sections in depth and provide all the information in your section by section response. Again, we are looking for, if our RFP has a 4.1, which it does, we're looking for a corresponding response to 4.1. And please make sure you include all the information in these sections. They are quite lengthy when you actually look in depth at the 4.1, 4.2, and the information we're asking for. Section 4.5, conflict of interest. In this section, you're asked to disclose any actual, potential, and/or perceived conflicts of interest. Please review this section and make any disclosures. Section 4.6, financial analysis. The Texas Lottery Commission does a thorough financial analysis of all proposals. Please provide the information requested in this section. If you feel this information is confidential, please mark it as such. This is a pass-fail category on the scoring matrix. It's critical that you provide the information that we've requested. Section 4.7, background investigations. The Texas Lottery reserves the right to conduct an in-depth background investigation on the apparent successful proposer. Section 4.7.2, a background investigation may be conducted on contractually defined vendor principals, meaning those who will be directly involved in selling or leasing the goods or performing the services subject to the RFP or resulting in a contract. This includes partners, shareholders, officers, directors who are directly involved in the contract or oversight of the contract. Section 4.7.3, Background investigations may be conducted on vendor employees who meet one or more of the criteria in this section. The contract requires a background investigation of employees on site at the Texas Lottery Commission. The background investigations may include will include fingerprinting. The apparent successful proposers may be required to complete all the forms in Attachment E, including E1, 2, 3, and 4 of the RFP by the prescribed time after the written announcement of the apparent successful proposers by the Texas Lottery. If you feel that any of the information you're providing in Attachment E is confidential, please mark it as such. As mentioned before, we ask that all proposers complete and submit Attachment D1 with its proposal. This is a certification that your company would not be denied a sales agent license under the Texas Government Code, Chapter 466.155, which is included as Attachment D in the RFP. Under Section 4.8, the disclosure of interested parties, if requested, the successful proposer may be required to fill out a 1295 form with the Texas Ethics Commission. This generally applies to contracts over $1 million and for companies who are not publicly traded. Juanita, are there any questions on Part 4?
We do. Per clause 3.14.2, confirming the automated scratch solution option can be exercised effective September 1st of 2022 and is therefore a corresponding payment to the proposer at time of deployment.
Ryan,
Angela?
Ryan, do you want to take a shot at that question?
I'm not sure I understand it. We might want to just look at that and answer that in writing.
Okay, that'll be a question that we will answer in writing. Are there any additional questions?
No, there are no additional questions.
Thank you, Juanita. At this time, I'll turn it over to Eric Williams, who's going to go over Part 5 and the Hub Subcontracting Plan.
Thank you, Angela. Good afternoon. My name is Eric Williams, and I'm the Hub Coordinator for the Texas Lottery Commission. I will be covering a very crucial element of your proposal, the Hub Subcontracting Plan, or HSP. If you're not the individual responsible for preparing the HSP, please pass this information to them and recommend they watch the video of this pre-proposal conference, which will be posted on the agency website. The Hub Subcontracting Plan is used to identify both Hub and non-Hub subcontractors that will be utilized under the awarded contract. All proposers, Hub and non-Hub, submitting a response to this RFP are required to submit an HSP. No one is exempt. As Angela previously mentioned, the HSP is a pass or fail element of this RFP. No evaluation points are given for the HSP, and proposers must submit an HSP with their proposal regardless of their subcontracting intentions. Any proposal received not including an HSP will be rejected, and the technical portion will not be evaluated. So it's important to submit a completed HSP with your proposal. Also, during the reviewing process, if it is determined that your submitted HSP has failed, your proposal will be disqualified and will not be evaluated. The HSP process is governed by rule established by the Office of the Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts. Per Section 5.1 of the RFP, you are required for reviewing this rule. The definition of a subcontractor is very broad and applies to any third-party vendor used to fulfill a portion of the contract. Our definition of a subcontractor is a person who contracts with the successor proposer to work, supply commodities, or contribute toward completing work for the Texas Lottery Commission. In other words, if the successful proposer who was awarded this contract is paying anyone who is not an employee to provide goods and/or services, they are very likely subcontracting under this definition. These individuals would receive a 1099, unlike your employees who would receive a W-2. Self-performance. A proposer who indicates that their company will be subcontracting any portion of the contract and will fulfill the entire contract with their own resources, including its own equipment, supplies, materials, and/or employees will be self-performing. Keep in mind that a pre-existing subcontracting relationship is considered subcontracting, in which case you cannot claim self-performance. Pre-existing subcontracting relationship is a business affiliation your company has with a third-party vendor who is currently supplying your company with goods and/or services and will continue to supply these goods and/or services to assist you in the performance of this contract. If you determine that your company is capable of fulfilling the entire contract with your own equipment, supplies, materials, and/or employees, please check the appropriate box in Section 2, which is the Respondent Subcontracting Intentions on the HSP form. Complete Section 3, which is a self-performing justification, by providing a thorough explanation of how your company will perform the entire contract with its own employees, supplies, materials, and/or equipment as it relates to Part 6 of the RFP, the scope of services. Complete Section 4 of the HSP form, the affirmation, prior to submitting your HSP with your proposal. If you're not self-performing, you would need to proceed with the good faith effort of the HSP. We have identified potential subcontracting opportunities in Section 5.5.1 of the RFP. These areas may or may not be subcontracted, depending on the proposer's existing resources, employees, and business model. You are not limited to the list in the RFP. However, if you intend to subcontract any portion of the contract and it's not listed, you are responsible for identifying it in your HSP submission. We have included in the RFP a list of hub vendors by CMBL class and commodity description to assist you in finding potential hub vendors. The Lottery Commission does not endorse, recommend, or attest to the capabilities of any company or individual listed within the RFP or on the CMBL Hub Search Directory. The good faith effort methods are for those proposers who intend to subcontract any portion of the contract. The goal of the good faith effort is to actively involve hubs in the Texas procurement process and ensure they receive a fair share of state business. Please check the appropriate boxes in Section 2, again, which is the Respondent Subcontracting Intentions of the HSP form, and perform one of the 3 good faith effort methods. The optional quick checklist will assist you in determining which of the 3 methods you should use. Good faith effort method A has 2 options. Method A, option 1. This option is for the proposer who will use only Texas certified hubs for all subcontracting opportunities listed in Section 2B, the Respondent Subcontracting Intentions of the HSP forms. If you use this method, please verify online that the hub vendor is still an active hub listed on the CMBL. Method A, option 2, meeting the specified hub contract goal. This option is for the proposer who will use a combination of non-hubs and Texas certified hubs. However, to meet the specified hub contract goal of 24.3%, the proposer can only count those hubs with which you have contracted with for 5 years or less. If you're going to subcontract and cannot claim method A1 or A2, then you must submit your HSP using method B, which is the good faith effort outreach. And this is done by notifying at least 3 Texas certified hubs per subcontracting opportunity, providing those hubs with at least 7 working days to respond. And this is excluding the day the solicitation was emailed, mailed, or faxed to the hub vendors, weekends, holidays, and any day that our executive director has closed the agency. You will also provide a scope of work for hubs to determine whether they are interested. Also provide a location where the specifications are located, i.e. a link to the posting on the ESBD or physical location. Information regarding insurance and bonding requirements if applicable. And also, in addition, notifying a minimum of 2 minority women trade organizations and or business development centers providing the same information above as the same time frame for the response. And these two are two independent requirements for submitting the HSP. A mentor may utilize a protege from a state agency sponsored mentor protege agreement for the subcontracting if the protege is able to provide the services. The mentor protege relationship may be utilized in lieu of additional solicitation to hubs. Proposals using this method must perform outreach even for areas where a proposer has a pre-existing or exclusive subcontracting relationship that will be used in performance of this contract. Our evaluation process for proposals received on or before the deadline for proposers is to review and evaluate the HSP and all supporting documentation to determine if the HSP has passed or failed. During our review, we may request clarification of information for the information that was submitted on your HSP. Again, there are no evaluation points assigned to the HSP. It is strictly a pass-fail element. If it is determined that your HSP has failed, the technical portion of your proposal would not be evaluated. Following the award of the contract, any proposed changes to the HSP must be submitted for review and approval by the agency. A written change approval form will be provided by the Lottery Commission. Subcontracting without prior authorization is a breach of contract. Monthly subcontracting expenditure reports are required as a condition of payment. As the successful proposer must provide written notice to each subcontractor informing them of their selection. A copy of this notice must be provided to the Lottery Commission no later than 10 working days after contract award as stated in section 5.6.1 of the RFP. This notice must specify at a minimum the contracting agency's name, its point of contact for the contract award number, the subcontracting opportunity to be performed, the appropriate dollar value of the subcontracting opportunity, and the expected percentage of the total contract that the subcontracting opportunity represents. To assist you with the HSP, the Lottery Commission provides the following resources and assistance. All vendors are strongly encouraged to take advantage of all the resources. Pre-proposal conference video will be posted on the agency website. Copy of the TLC's pre-bid proposal conference booklet regarding HSP requirements is available on the agency's website. A HSP quick checklist is included in the RFP. Proposers have the opportunity to submit written HSP questions up until the date your proposal is submitted. However, we suggest you submit questions early to allow yourself the necessary time to cure any deficiencies with your plan. You are encouraged to start working on your plan right away to give yourself plenty of time. The HSP Q&A is posted on the TLC website and the ESBD, which will be a rolling document. Be sure to check the date posted. We will review drafts of your HSP to identify deficiencies and provide feedback. However, we will not state whether your draft has passed or failed. We will provide one-on-one workshops upon request. These may be conducted via Zoom, Teams, or telephone conference call. The purpose of the workshops is to discuss the Hub subcontracting requirements, answer questions specific to conducting a good faith effort, and completing the Hub forms. This process will also allow you the opportunity to submit your HSP forms for review by the Texas Lottery Commission prior to the proposal deadline. However, this process does not guarantee that the HSP submitted with the proposal will pass. It is the proposal's responsibility to understand the requirements of the HSP and to perform all the required steps prior to submitting the HSP. The last date to review any draft HSPs for deficiencies and one-on-one workshops is listed in section 1.4 of the RFP. As per section 2.1 of the RFP, please forward all questions or requests to Angela. Again, we strongly encourage you to take full advantage of all the available resources to assist you with your HSP submission. Once you submitted your HSP with the proposal, there is no opportunity to cure. Please consult the scheduled events and make sure that you know which dates are critical in terms of preparing and submitting the HSP. In closing, I remind you again that if you're not the person who is responsible for completing the HSP, please pass this information to them, as well as let them know that today's pre-proposal conference will be available for view on the agency website. Please submit questions regarding the HSP after this conference in writing, and they will be answered and posted on the agency website and on the ESBD. HSP questions can be submitted up until the deadline for proposals, which is listed in section 1.4 of the RFP. At this time, are there any questions to section 5 of the RFP?
Eric, there are no questions at this time.
Okay, thank you, Juanita. And I'll turn it back over to you, Angela.
Thank you, Eric. All right, I'm going to move on to part 6, 7, and 8. And Eric referenced part 6 as the scope of services. In this RFP, that includes 7 and 8. I will collectively call those the scope of services. Part 6, 7, and 8 require section by section response. I will not be going into detail on these sections. This is your opportunity to tell us how you will perform the services described in each section. It's not enough for you to say you can do something. Tell us how you will do it. Provide examples of techniques that you've used for success. Proposers need to demonstrate their abilities to do the work requested. Juanita, are there any questions on part 6, 7, or 8, or any other portion of the RFP at this time?
There are no questions at this time.
Thank you. All right, we're toward the end of the conference, so please submit any questions in the Q&A feature if you have any today, or you can submit questions in accordance with the schedule of events. I'm going to go through some final reminders. All of the scope of services questions must be submitted in writing via the deadlines in the RFP and submitted to me via email. Scope of services questions that are not submitted in writing by the time and date specified will not be answered. If you have a question on the RFP process, you may contact me and I may be able to respond. Generally, this is the case for all sections except parts 6, 7, and 8. We cannot answer questions on 6, 7, and 8 or the scope of services once the deadlines have passed. Please make note of all the dates in the schedule of events. Proposers are responsible for checking the electronic state business daily and the Texas Lottery's website for any and all notices, amendments, and questions and answers regarding the RFP. We will not directly email these to you. Prior to submission of your proposal, please review the entire RFP carefully to ensure that you submit all the required information and documentation. Websites later today or tomorrow. And right before we go, Juanita, are there any final questions?
There are no questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our conference today. Thank you for your attendance and have a good day.